The press handstand is a beast for most people to conquer. It can be a pretty long journey with many different components to work on, between the strength, the mobility, and sometimes, even more importantly, the coordination between the different elements at play for us to be able to press up into a handstand. The first thing you want to remember as you start that journey is that everybody is different depending on your level of flexibility, your level of upper body strength, your compression level, your mobility around the shoulders, around the hamstrings, your existing level of handstands, the length of your limbs even, how many times you can train per week. All this is gonna alter how long it will take you. So don't be in too much of a rush, because the amount of people who get it under 6 months is actually quite marginal. In these videos, I'm gonna show you some of the drills that you can include in your training practice to give you a bit of inspiration and diversify your training sessions as you work towards your press. There is much more to be talked about, and again, ideally, you want to program something that suits you and your needs and ensure that the right drills are performed at the right time. If you want more information about how to do this, you can always reach out on my website and join the Rocket program. Once you're done warming up, one thing I like to do to train the press handstand are holds, just to finish the warm-up, of 20 to 30 seconds. If you don't have those just yet, a good recommendation would be to get those hold consistently first. And the way we're gonna get into them is gonna matter. There's specific kick-ups that make our life a bit harder, that challenge our shoulder flexion a bit more than others, which is gonna be an essential component of our press. Instead of simply kicking up into, let's say, a straddle, what I would invite you to do are one or all of the three following things. One, the pike up. Pike up requires us to have both legs together, push on both legs, and get into a straight handstand here. If you're not too sure how to do this, start with the wall. Try to keep your elbows straight, although if they flex and you manage to re-extend them, this can be useful in your press handstand per se. And we're gonna have to aggressively shoot our butt towards the wall while opening the shoulder angle, flexing the shoulders to be stacked early, without which you will get stuck here. And because both legs are together, the length of that lever is going to make it very heavy on your shoulders. It's going to be extremely hard to hold this for more than a second. So we want to get out of this deficit position, a logic which is at the core of your press handstand practice, as early as possible. Because we have momentum, that should be doable. We push on both legs, get out of here early, and bring your feet to the wall, or float if you prefer. This logic, of course, can be brought freestanding. And if you can balance here 10 seconds, it would be nice to continue to warm up with a negative. The second way to warm up for your press into your holds, right? You should have 5 to 15 holds of, let's say, 10 to 30 seconds to finish your warm up and step into your practice, is the knee on the floor kick up, ideally with the toes not curled on the floor, unable to push your way up, but the feet, the top of the feet flat on the ground. This may be uncomfortable though for some of you, in which case at first you can allow the toes to be curled, or you can put a mat between under your feet. And the idea here is that we can't use our legs as much, we can't push on them as much, so we're gonna have to use more shoulder flexion, more aggressive shoulder flexion to finish the job. Or say a frog. Even if you have reps that look like this, where it's very hard to finish because you didn't push quite hard and you have to re-fight your way to the position, those are actually even more beneficial than once you get very efficient at finding momentum despite this weird foot position. So don't dismiss those kick-ups just because they feel hard and they don't look as pretty. If you're working hard at flexing your shoulders to finish the kick up, then you're warming up properly. The last way we can spice things up in our warm-up to promote better earlier shoulder flexion, which will be, again, at the core of your press, is elevating your hands on books, blocks, yoga blocks, whatever feels safe and whatever matches your current level of ability. The idea being you can kick up into it already and you're going to have to push a bit more than usual to make up for that elevation. Or if you want to spice things up, you can go back to your tuck up, pike up, straddle up and work with the hands elevated. I would suggest 3 good reps of each of those, or 5 to 8 reps of the one that suits you. Then finishing the first part of your training in which you're still holding shapes, I would suggest that you go for the frog or the straddle and the straight pike and work on 2 things. One, lowering the legs as much as you can while keeping your shoulders as open as you can and holding this position, which would be a bit spicy around the upper back, for 10 to 15 seconds. So we open, we lower the legs, and we hold it there. It should be a bit spicier around the upper back, trapezius. And we come back down. You can do 3 sets of that in the pike position and 3 sets in the straddle position. Really compressing at the hips here to close the angle between the thighs and the belly button. And coming back down. And then go for 3 more reps of each. And by reps, I mean happy reps. I mean effective, successful reps. If it takes you a few goes, a few attempts to successfully do 1 rep, then those reps don't count. The next one is you want to lower yourself in those 2 positions just where you were, and from there continue lowering your legs, and that should put your shoulders at a breaking point. They will want to collapse forward to make up for the fact that you're now going too low for what you can sustain in terms of shoulder flexion. The consequences of that will be perceived in your shoulder position. Your shoulders will want to lean forward and maybe your elbows will start bending, and if that happens too, your hands will start cupping, going from position A to position B. Well, we want to take a step after we have crossed this breaking point and hold this now deficit position for as long as we can, all the way up to 5 to 6 seconds. Because the shape is not functional anymore, it's going to feel extremely heavy, but this extremely heavy position is the position in which you will find yourself once you're done taking off from the press, and out of which you're going to have to aggressively open your shoulders again to finish the press. So we go into our, say, straddle, we compress as much as we can, and then we go a bit lower. Now the shoulders start taking over here, we are planching, we try to fight against this, it is nice and heavy, we hold this for 3, 4, 5 seconds. Rinse and repeat 3 to 5 times for 1 shape, or 3 times each for 2 shapes. We are now moving away from the holds into the strength development part of our press. You want to think of the ascension towards, say, a straddle, out of a straddle press, to be comprised of 3 elements. The first one is the takeoff, which is probably the hardest. The second one is the lower half, and the third one is the upper half. In the way we teach it in the Handstand Academy, we want to work on each of those positions separately using drills that will tackle them in very specific ways. Starting with the upper half, I want you to go in a straddle or a frog, depending on the one that suits you best for the press. Have your elbows locked, hands flat, balance it there, bend your elbows a bit, feel your hands cupping, hold this deficit position for a few seconds and then re-extend back into your straddle or your frog. So I'm here, I bend, and I extend back. And then the re-extension of the elbows is coupled with flexion of the shoulders, which is, again, the thing which will allow you to get out of the heavy position you will end up in as you finish the lower half of your press. So make sure that as you bend here and you re-extend, the shoulders open. If you bend and forget to extend, it should take you off balance in the undershot zone anyway. If this is hard, of course, you can take it to the wall. Make sure that your feet are nice and light, nice and open in the shoulders. Bend. Try to keep your feet light. Extend. And you want that extension to be propelling you off the wall. Next, we work on the lower half of our press with eccentrics of the straddle press. That is, we try to decelerate the landing from an elevated surface to the floor, fighting against gravity. This will build the strength eventually to linger in those very hard positions longer and to concentrically lift our way up to the straddle. For this variation, you want to have different heights at your disposal. You don't want to stick with one. You want to alternate between different heights. As you can see here, I have the luxury of having blocks and boxes, but you can use chairs, you can use a sofa, you can use a couch, you can use a bed at home. Everything works as long as you're safe doing so. And here, my house box is stopped kind of under my knee, but I would be happy enough for you to find something that goes all the way up to the hips, because this will work on your strength differently. Don't think that lower is necessarily better. For eccentrics, that's absolutely not true. Lower will be better when you're working on taking off on the concentric part. But in the strength development using eccentrics, different heights actually will do a different job. I suggest you start this one with the lowest first, as to really fine-tune what happens in those first few inches of the floor. So we set ourselves up on our blocks. The weight is on our feet. We pour the weight onto our hands. And we try to land those feet as slow as possible on the floor. You can do the linear variation. You can do the straddling variation. And you can do the frog variation. You do 3 reps on one, move on to your higher surface, higher blocks, higher books, whatever it is. And same idea here. Feet are going to be a bit further from each other. We knee and we fight. Rest a lot in between.